welcome back to Cards and Comics, and today I am going to look at some most recent PWCC baseball vintage auctions. And here I'm going through some of the most recent listings and kind of drilling down into some of the more recent vintage auctions. And I want to discuss a few cards. I picked a few out to have a good discussion and to show you some trends. You know, some things are going up, some things are going down. I think the market is somewhat stabilizing a little bit, but some of the really key cards are still going up. And so I think it's not every card, and so I think that's good. Not every card is breaking records and doubling, tripling in price. Some cards are definitely seeing a movement, kind of either down or flattening out. So first card I'm going to look at is this 73 Mike Schmidt rookie card. If we go to VCP pricing, that's 73 Schmidt. So you can see it brought 1337 right here. And then one sold just a couple of days later for 1500. And if you look at the pricing before that, this card was approaching somewhat $2,000, so it's gone down from its high of, again, around $2,000, and has been selling, in that $1,200 to $1,300 range a little more frequently. So you can see it kind of backing down from that 1,800 down to 15, 16, 15, 12, 13, and then obviously the most recent at 15, but that 1260 right there, I think that's a realistic price. So I think this card is selling down in that $1,200 range. Which seems pretty legitimate for a card of this nature. It's a nice card, 73 Schmidt rookie card. So that's looking fairly normal. Moving on down the road here, I'm gonna point out the 71 Nolan Ryan. And so one of the trends I'm seeing is the price disparity between Sgc and Psa is growing even wider. So you can see that a PSA 9 just sold in January for $12,750, and the most recent Sgc 9 just brought 8,200, and that's most recent sale. So even given the fact that PSA 9 hasn't sold in 3 months, it's still bringing close to $5,000 more than the Sgc equivalent grade. And that just shows you that it's not just 10, 20, 30% on some of these big cards. It is literally almost double in some cases. In this case, it's almost over a third, or over 30% more in price. So that just shows you that if you're investing in these Sgc cards, and this goes back to the grading side of maximizing value, obviously PSA is still bringing quite a bit more than Sgc on the vintage card market, and Sgc's got a really good track record compared to the other grading companies that are out there. So that just shows you the PSA premium is still fairly large. The 69 Reggie and I didn't pull this up, but that I know I actually own the 7.5. And another thing that I'll bring up is this SAE condition, the eye appeal that PWC gives to these cards, with the S being the top and the E to the A. And you'll see that play out in a few cards we pull up here. But I'm not a big believer in it because I think eye appeal is, again, subjective to everyone else. And to me, if like a white borders might be more important than centering. And so it's not the same for everyone. So I don't think you can just assign these kind of eye appeal ratings and have everyone agree on them. So here's a good one, the 68 Mantle, so at $22.25. And if you look at the most recent sold, this is a card that has gone up, But if you look at it, and if you take in, some of these higher prices, and obviously, 3801, and in fact that 3801 is I believe, yeah, it's a PWCC auction from February. So in February is when things really got kind of crazy, and now we're seeing some a little more normalcy. And this card has gone from that high of 3,800, floating in that 2,200 range. And this is what's crazy is that two cards were sold in this auction, and one brought 19 and one brought 2,200. If you look at the images, we'll just see that this one was a regular, no eye appeal rating, and then this one got an A, which is kind of the lowest eye appeal rating. It's a little better centered. I think everyone can see that without having to need PWCC telling us which one is better centered, and it brought like $300 more. But again, that's way down from the high, and even from this bite now, 2,600. So that shows that the Mantle cards, and that 68 Mantle is a high pop. 68 cards in general are pretty easy to get, so there's no reason that they should be selling, quite as high as they've been bringing recently. So I think that makes sense. So that, again, that's more normalcy to the market. Even though if you go back to that card and look at historic history, when it was bringing around $1,000, $1,200, it's still way up there, compared to what it was, which is double here when it's averaging out. However, but it's not triple or quadruple, which is what we saw some cards, tripling and quadrupling, and we'll still see that. But this card shouldn't do that because of such a high pop. Going back down, there's another interesting card here. The 67 Hank Aaron, and this is interesting because it's an S. So this is that S grade, and this is where it gets kind of wonky because it's not showing up in VCP data. So it was 1614, and if you look at the 67 VCP data for PSA 8, and it's not showing up. So that obviously would be, the highest one ever sold based on VCP data. So that would be a new record. And if you look at this card has sold quite a few times below $1,000 in March and April. And you go back to February when kind of the big, right here, this 1466. That's kind of the high water mark back in February, and now we're seeing it getting back down below 1,000. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it kind of goes right back to 1614. And again, this is that S rating is really driving some of these higher prices. So you can attribute to the S rating. Again, I think going a $900 card or $1,000 card going to $1,600, it's a big premium to pay, and I don't think. Honestly, it's worth that kind of a premium. Going down the road here, I think, none of these cards really stuck out to me in the 64s and the 65s. There was no cards really to kind of push to really get too depth, other than just Pete Rose rookie cards just gone nuts. That card's really got up in value. Moving down, I actually think this Blue Brock 8.5 and $4,861. I mean, I think that's high, but it's somewhat reasonable because, again, a 60s Hall of Fame rookie card of a pretty popular player. So I would say, I kind of agree with that in terms of just that the card should be going up. Continue down. Okay, this is a card where just craziness. This is 2475 for this Koufax. And the thing about it is, this is where you're really seeing the PSA versus SGC thing happen because, here's the 2475. Obviously, it's double and triple what the card was bringing before. And in fact, if you go back to January, this card was a $400 card. Now it's $2,400. So this card has gone absolutely bonkers. If you look at this Probstein version, a little off top to bottom, but I mean, here's the E rating, which is again, mid tier for what PWC gives in terms of eye appeal. Yeah, and then if you go back even to what Sgc is doing, there was an Sgc, I believe in '92, yeah, a '92 in the same auction, yeah, right here. So a higher grade, in a PWCC auction, brought $700, and so it didn't even average what a PSA 8 was bringing. It just kind of shows that even the PSA 8s, even when this card wasn't really taken off, was bringing more than that back in April and in February and March. So this is a good example of just the price disparity between same auction, SGC cards a higher grade, but that PSA card brought virtually 2.5 times what that PSA card or SGC card brought. So scrolling down, and there's another card here that's really the 60, and here's a great example of two cards with the same eye appeal rating, A's and A's, and the same auction. One brings $2,000, one brings $3,600. If you look at the cards, you can see that this card, the first one is a little bit darker, bordered, whereas the one below it is a little bit whiter. But overall, if you do the pluses and minuses on these cards, in my opinion, they're really close. And that little bit of whiter color, all of a sudden the card brought almost double in the same grade with the same eye appeal rating from PWCC. So again, this is really silliness in terms of just what people are overpaying on cards like this, because this is something you need to understand as if you're an investor or collector. When you go to resell these cards, nobody, for the most part, cares what the PWCC rating is. If you take it to let's say another auction, or if you take it to a card show and sell it to another dealer, for the most part, they don't care. They're not going to give you a giant premium because you have a PWCC A rating card sticker on the back of your card. They're just going to ignore it, look at the average for this card, and kind of give you a price based on that, not based on this kind of crazy rating. So the problem with these kind of auctions and these kind of results is just, if you love this card and it's going to be in your personal collection for a long time, that's great. In fact, I've overpaid for a lot of cards that I thought were just better eye appeal, but not to this level. I would not pay almost double for a card with slightly whiter borders. Considering the other card in this auction was really nice too. And this card, was a good card. And so it again, it goes back to that idea. If you're buying it to sell within a shorter time period of time, you're probably going to lose money on it. If you bought it to hold and you think in 10 years, you might sell it, then you may have done, you're probably okay. But it's just a good example of kind of the craziness right now with PWCC auctions and these eye appeal ratings. So going down to this Willie Mays. This Willie Mays is really crazy. If you go down here to this Willie Mays, the 7. Not only did this just go off the charts, kind of silly. If you go back in history, actually, there was a $1,400 sale back in February. Again, this is a good also education on price and manipulation sometimes. We saw this back in 2016. So if you go back to my other videos, I show you where in 2016 certain cards and players were targeted by buying groups to drive up the value. And it happened very similar to this. Only in certain auctions, only in certain instances did you see that huge price swing, but it happened all at the same time. And then here you're seeing in February again in a PWCC auction, a card that was bringing $700 goes to 14, and then in this latest auction it goes to 1586. And if you look at this image, it's an E rating, which again isn't the highest. It's pretty good. It's pretty well centered, but it's a 7. The one thing that you might say about it is it's got this. It's an older graded, so it could get a 7.5. It has potential. All cards have potential to be regraded and get higher numbers. I mean, but this one is theoretically before the .5 grading. But yeah, you look at it and there's a corner. There's a corner. It's got wear. These aren't perfect corners. It's got some print. Again, very common for this issue. Again, it's a nice 7. It's right there. If you want to argue that it's a 7.5 or it could be an 8.0, it might be. But if you make that argument, okay, it might be an 8.0. Okay. Well, what are hates bringing? Well, that was almost $1,600. Well, I mean, recently in March there was one that brought 1736, and then right after it was 1850. So again, paying $1,600 for a 7. Are you hoping to get an 8? If you do, you're going to make another $200, $300. I mean, I just think it's kind of crazy. And I think people paying these really giant premiums. It's either people don't care and they just go to their favorite dealer online and buy from, or there could be some a little bit of manipulation there. So again, I think we know that there is lots of chances to shill bid in these kind of auctions. That card really hurts me. This 58 Koufax, just $3,000 for a card that was $600 to $800. I mean, again, it's not as egregious as this card right here. This and this 15,000, 15,400 for this 57 Mantle. Again, if you look at this Mantle, it's not. This card had brought a couple of times. $1,500, $1,400. So, it's not the biggest egregious number, but in March, this Mantle here sold for $9,000, and it's a little off center. And so, yes, I get it that perfectly centered cards are going to bring a premium. This card is very well centered and has some nice gloss. It's not perfectly centered for sure, and even you compare it to the one before that, which is a little more off center. That brought 12.5. Again, it's a little nicer than those cards, but again, none of these cards are perfect, and but that's a huge premium. And again, it's a lot. A card one week brings 9,000. Next week it brings 15,000. It's just really hard to predict. And I think right now we're in this kind of. I do think what people are doing nowadays is that these key cards and I said it before. Now there might be these buying groups out there pitting these digital stock portfolio of cards together and buying these cards up and not really caring that what it takes to get them. Okay, I think there is some FOMO out there where they don't think that there's a lot of these cards out there, and these pop reports are pretty high on some of these cards, meaning that there's enough out there for these cards to appear in auction frequently. And you see that by just seeing that this card is selling a few times every month. So in February it sold twice, in January it sold twice, October it sold twice, in March it sold twice, it sold once already. So you get a couple of shots a month on eBay or other auction houses to buy this card. So is it that there's a lot of people that want this card, so there's a lot of competition. So I get that, but I do think it's still more available than some of the pricing is going into it. Is kind of what some people might be thinking, that this card is when they see it, they got to have it, and that's why maybe some of these prices are so high. Not knowing that that there is a pretty high pop report. So last page we're going to, for the most part, is 50, here we go into some later 50s cards, and I want to show you this. Clemente, they brought $4,000 again. I think this is where you see some kind of craziness. This is a white back, but again, back in February, one spiked at 3,700 and this one spiked at 4,000. But in between, you had this card basically going back down close to $2,200. So I think it's a great card. I love the card. I'm a Clemente collector. I do think $1,800 to $2,000 is where this card would normally be at. In this market, you're seeing it, obviously go higher, but I mean, earlier this year it was below $1,200. So I do think that this card is a little inflated, but it's a beautiful card, and this particular copy I'll show you was a nice copy. Maybe I can find the actual image on the site. That's the back. Okay, I guess this one. All right. But yeah, it was a nice copy. It really was. Nice borders, a little print, but just a really nice 7. Now again, this is a PSA 7. I will tell you, I paid less than this for my PSA 8 a few years ago. So that just gives you an idea of how much they've gone up. Now, what does an 8 bring? Well, an 8 brings $5,000 on average, and this one brought 4,000. So, take that with a grain of salt. That for an extra $1,000, would you rather just have the 8? And in most cases, I would rather have the 8. Moving on down to another card that's really interesting to me is this 55 Jackie Robinson. So again, last year I picked up an 8 in this card. This 55 Jackie PSA 7. Again, it's a great card. I'm not going to say it's not a great card, but 4,200. Now I think what you're seeing here is this card is kind of leveling out. This card got super hot. Again, if you go back to February, this card really spiked from below $2,000 pretty much in the end of 20 to the beginning of the year, and then all of a sudden you saw it spiking to 3,500, 30 that, and then it hit $4,000 in March, and it's kind of stuck there, and we've got basically 4 straight auctions where it's between 4,000 and 4,300. So I think this card is leveling off, and so I think this is kind of either it's at the very max of its for a little bit, and this is kind of the value for a while, or it could go down a little bit to the prior March February levels. But I think this is a card that hopefully we won't see it going to 8,000 or something kind of crazy, but just shows you that there is some some of the pricing is get a little more rational, and we're seeing some leveling out. And the last card is again a crazy card in terms of just what it brought. I think we're all kind of shocked when some of these prices on some of these cards. And here's one, this PSA 7 54 Maze. Now this is kind of where I go into that I wrote had the video out about Maze cards being severely undervalued now. But this card for $6,200, I mean the prior high was $4,700 on a buy it now, but I mean it was averaging at 2,000 or less for a majority of 20, and then even in 21, the February price surge of $3,000, it went to $3,038, but I mean $6,200, And again, it's an S, so that's where you see that huge price swing right now with these S cards. It is after the half grade, so the number is below the letters, so that's how you tell if it's a half grade. If it's been graded during the half grade era. And it is a nice card, so I'm not going to say it's not a nice card. And if you want to pay a premium, that's fine. Pay a premium, but paying double for the most part of what the card is normally selling for. This is going to be tough if you want to resell it anytime soon, other than in a PWCC auction. So I think that is really tough for people who are going to see that price, and obviously everything on eBay that's raw is going to get marked up now, and that's on eBay that's on Buy It Now is going to get marked up. And the last card I want to show you is again illustrating my I had a video about the pricing between Maze and Mantle, and here's a great example of it. And it's in the 52 Bowman set, and in this auction you had right here the 52 Maze and the 52 Mantle, both E's on eye appeal. Both of them, one was the Sgc, one was PSA, but they're really nice cards, and you can just see that the Mantle card is, $16,000 more expensive than the Maze, and I just think that even though it's Sgc, and you put a 30%, let's say a 30% markdown, okay, so that's maybe $5,000 or $6,000 difference, and it's $16,000. So it doesn't explain, even if it was $10,000 difference, it's still a $6,000 gap. If you add on the typical $5,000 Maze Mantle difference in pricing, plus the Sgc grade versus PSA grade, you say that's a $10,000 difference, and you're still $6,000 difference between these two cards. And I don't care that the Mantle is one of the nice. I agree that the 52 Mantle Bowman is one of my favorite all-time Mantle cards. I love it, and I think a lot of other collectors do. But I mean, it's just kind of crazy to see the price difference between Maze and Mantle. And other than that, just kind of scrolling through, there's nothing else I saw that was kind of crazy. I think that Satchel Paige is warranted to be that high of a price, honestly. I think the Jackie Robinson, it took, this guy was such an important historical figure. I can't believe it took this long for the Leafs to kind of go up the way they did. I mean, if you're going to pay a lot of money for a card, you might as well pay a lot of money for Jackie Robinson. Now, I will say this: if you go on blowout forums and kind of Google or search for all the trimming issues with PSA cards right now, and some of these really bad actors who trimmed a lot of cards, one of the sets they targeted heavily is 48 Leaf, because 48 Leaf had some issues with size variation, and they know they can trim these things down and to a standard size and get them through PSA. So I'm not saying these cards are trimmed. I don't know. I haven't done the comparison or looked at the blowout forums, because it's a running total of cards that they've did photo verification of cards that were trimmed, and it's pretty convincing information on trimming. But 48 Leaf was heavily targeted. The Musial, the Jackie Robinson were all really targeted. So that's one of the problems with this set and that's one of the reasons why I don't really have any 48 Leafs. It's just because how targeted this set was with trimmers. And it's just how it is. We can deny it all you want. We can complain all we want. That the cards are still cards and they're still valuable, but they're trimmed. And I think this set is kind of ruined for me anyway. And it's going to take a lot for me to really get over all the trimming 48 Leafs that I've seen. So that's one thing to think about when you're investing in those kind of vintage cards. And leave it on this is look at this card right here. I think this is a really good example of things of deals. Okay, this is Warren Spahn's rookie card, $1,200 for a PSA 7. And I really think, Warren Spahn, look at his stats and this guy was, pretty much the best left-hander in the game for top 5 all time. And this guy, his rookie card is worth almost nothing. So, this isn't even a PSA 6 58 Willie Mays anymore. I think this it's just kind of crazy that a Warren Spahn rookie card in this environment is worth so little. And even Yogi Berra, a PSA 7 Yogi Berra at $4,000 for as popular as Yogi Berra is, seems really low. So there are still deals out there if you look at the environment as a whole, guys. So this review of this auction is really just about that there is some rationalization coming back into the market in some cards. Some cards are leveling out. Some cards are continuing to go nuts, which is kind of how it's always been. But I think there is, the common cards or the cards that have more, population reports are slowly, like the 68 Mantle I showed, those cards are slowly getting back to normal. Getting back to normal. I think, they're obviously going to be elevated from 2020 levels, but I think the heartburn from February when we saw the prices just go, quadruple. I think that will, I think that's over, and I think we'll see some leveling off, and I think we'll see how it shakes out. But hey, there's some deals out there still to be had, even in PWCC auctions. So next month we'll look at it again and see if it's still going up or if it's kind of leveling off. But I hope you guys enjoy the kind of review, and see you next time. Bye.